Picture this. You did everything right. You spent money on your credit card. You had the cash sitting right there in your bank account. You paid the full balance the moment the bill arrived. Zero interest. Zero late fees. You were the perfect borrower. And then 3 days later, your phone buzzes. Your credit score just dropped 25 points. You stare at the screen. You check again. You did not miss a payment. You did not overspend. You were responsible. And the system punished you anyway. This happens to thousands of people every single month. And most of them never find out why. My name is John, and this channel exists for one reason only. To hand you the financial knowledge that the banks are perfectly happy keeping to themselves. If that sounds like something you need in your life, subscribe right now because what I am about to tell you could save your credit score at the worst possible moment. Today we are going deep into credit utilization. And I need you to understand something before we go any further. This is not a boring topic. This is the single fastest lever you can pull to change your credit score. Payment history takes years to build. Hard inquiries take 2 years to fall off your report. But utilization, that one resets almost instantly if you know how to control the data. We are going to talk about exactly when banks report your balance, why paying in full is not the same thing as having a low balance, and the specific numbers you need to hit so the algorithm rewards you instead of punishing you. But first, I need to tell you about the trap. The trap that catches almost every responsible person who has ever owned a credit card. From the time we were old enough to understand money, we were told the same thing. Pay your bill on time. The due date is everything. And in terms of not losing money to interest and late fees, that advice is completely correct. But here is where it all falls apart. We assume that when we pay off our balance, the credit bureaus immediately know about it. We assume that Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax are watching our accounts like a live security camera. We assume that if we pay off everything on the 15th, the bureau updates its records on the 16th and all is well. That is not how any of this works. The credit scoring system is not a live video feed. It is a photograph. One photograph, taken once a month. And the devastating part is that photograph is usually taken at the worst possible moment, right when your balance is at its highest, before you have had the chance to pay it down. Here is how the timeline actually works. Let's say your billing cycle runs from the 1st to the 30th of the month. During those 30 days, you are living your life. Buying groceries, paying for gas, going out to dinner. Your balance is climbing. Then on the 30th, the cycle closes. The bank generates your statement, that PDF that shows up in your email. This moment right here is everything. This is called the statement closing date. Whatever balance is sitting on your account on that specific day is the number the bank sends to the credit bureaus. It gets locked into your credit report for the entire month. But your due date is not until about 25 days later. So your card could show a $3,000 balance on the 30th. That number gets reported to the bureau, and even if you pay every single cent on the 20th of the following month, the bureau already has the $3,000 snapshot stored. It already made up its mind about you. It already decided you look like someone carrying heavy debt. And your score drops accordingly, even though you paid perfectly on time. This is the part that makes people feel like they're going crazy. You feel responsible because money is leaving your account to pay the bill. But your credit report looks like you are barely keeping your head above water. I have spoken to people who became genuinely terrified of using their credit cards because every time they made a large purchase, even one they could absolutely afford, their score took a hit. They started thinking the system was broken. They started thinking credit cards were dangerous. It is not broken. It is just delayed. The system is reporting yesterday's news while you are living today. Your credit score is stuck on a 30-day lag, taking snapshots before your payments even arrive. And if you do not take control of when that snapshot is taken, you are allowing the bank to define your financial reputation based on your worst day of the month. The way out of this is called the statement date strategy. Pay down your balance 3 or 4 days before your statement closing date. Not the due date, the closing date. If you do this, when the bank generates your statement, it sees a balance of almost nothing. Maybe $10, maybe $20. That is the number it sends to Experian. That is the number that defines your credit utilization for that month. Then 3 weeks later, when the actual due date arrives, you just pay that tiny remaining amount. No interest, no late fee. But the record that was sent to the bureaus shows you barely used your credit at all. Now at this point, Some of you might be thinking it probably only makes a difference of a point or two. You would be dramatically underestimating what is at stake here. Look at how your credit score is built. Payment history takes up the biggest piece, 35%. Makes sense. Did you pay your bills? But the second biggest piece, coming in at 30%, is amounts owed. And that category is almost entirely driven by your credit utilization ratio. Let that sink in. Nearly 1/3 of your entire financial reputation is determined by how much of your available credit you are using at the exact moment the snapshot is taken. It outweighs how long your credit history is. It outweighs what types of credit you have. You could have a perfect 10-year track record, and if you let your card spike for just 1 month, that 30% piece crumbles and pulls your entire score down with it. The math itself is simple. Your utilization is your current balance divided by your credit limit. $500 owed on a $1,000 card puts you at 50%. The scoring models consider anything above 30% a warning sign. Above 50%, you look like you are in serious trouble. Near 100%, and your score goes into freefall. And here is what makes this even more brutal. It applies not just to your total credit across all cards combined, but to each individual card on its own. You could have $50,000 in total available credit across multiple cards. But if one single card with a $500 limit is maxed out, your score still takes damage. The algorithm flags that one account as a sign of financial stress, even if everything else looks perfect. I have seen people with 800 credit scores drop into the 740s simply because they booked a family vacation on a card with a low limit. They did not miss a payment. They did not apply for a new loan. They just let utilization cross a threshold on the wrong day. And when they checked their app and saw the drop, they panicked. They assumed identity theft. They assumed a banking error. The reality was just cold and different math. The reason the algorithm reacts this way is that historically, people who max out their credit cards are more likely to default on their debt. So the moment your utilization crosses those thresholds, the score adjusts immediately to reflect what statistically looks like growing financial risk. Here is the relief though. Utilization has no memory. Unlike a missed payment that stays on your report for 7 years, utilization is completely memoryless. The moment a new lower balance gets reported, the previous high balance is forgotten entirely. If you were at 90% utilization in January and your score tanked, but you bring it down to 5% in February, your score bounces back as if the 90% never existed. That is the power of this strategy. You are not repairing old damage. You are simply correcting the current data point. And you can do it in 30 days or less. So naturally, most people hearing this assume the goal is to get your reported balance to absolute zero every single month. If low is good, zero must be perfect. Right? Stop right there. Consistently reporting a zero balance across all your cards can actually result in a lower score than reporting a small balance. I know that sounds completely backwards, but the algorithm has a problem with ghosts. If your report shows $0 owed month after month, the scoring model has no data on how you actually handle credit. It cannot assess you because you are not showing any behavior. In the eyes of the system, a person who never uses their credit is slightly more uncertain than a person who uses it responsibly and manages it well. You have to demonstrate the behavior they are trying to score. The people with the highest scores, those sitting at 850, average somewhere between 4 and 7% utilization. Not zero. A small, controlled, visible balance. There is a strategy around this called all zero except one. If you have 5 credit cards, you bring 4 of them down to zero before the statement date. On the 5th card, you pay it down so that when the statement closes, it shows a tiny balance, something like $10 or $20, roughly 1% of the limit. This tells the algorithm exactly what it wants to hear. Yes, I use credit. And yes, I keep it extremely low. I already know your next question. If I leave a balance, do I pay interest? No. And this is where the confusion comes from. Reporting a balance is completely different from carrying a balance. Remember the timeline. The statement closes on the 30th showing a $10 balance. That gets reported. You have until the due date, typically 20 days later, to pay that $10. Pay it before the due date, and you owe zero interest. You get the score benefit of showing activity, and you pay absolutely nothing extra for it. You are threading the needle between the reporting date and the due date. So if you are applying for a mortgage next month and you need every possible point you can squeeze out of the system, do not go to zero. Go to 1%. Pay down your primary card so the statement shows a tiny amount. Leave a coffee purchase on there. Bring every other card to zero. This sends the active use signal without triggering the risk signal. If you are not applying for anything soon, just keeping your utilization naturally below 10 or 20% is usually enough to stay comfortably above 760. But if you want to crack 800, you need to be managing that 1% intentionally. Now here is where most people who try this strategy fail in practice. They rely on autopay. Autopay is designed to protect you from being late. It is not designed to optimize your score. If you have autopay set to pull your statement balance on the due date, you have already handed control back to the bank. To actually execute this strategy, you need to take manual control. Start with information gathering. You need to find the statement closing date for every card you own. This is usually buried. The mobile app screams the due date at you because that is what the bank wants you focused on. To find the closing date, go to your Statements tab and open a past bill. Look for the words Billing Cycle Ends or Next Closing Date. Put these dates in your calendar as recurring monthly reminders. If your card closes on the 15th, set your reminder for the 13th. That 2-day buffer matters because bank transfers sometimes take a day or two to actually clear and post. Then on your reminder day, log into your account and look at your current balance. Say it shows $800. If you want to report $10, you manually initiate a payment of $790 right then. Not through autopay. You do it yourself. When the closing date arrives and the statement generates, it sees $10. That is the number sent to Experian. You controlled the snapshot. After the statement closes and you receive that email saying your statement is ready, open it. Confirm it shows the small balance you intended. Then make sure that small amount gets paid before the due date, so you do not accidentally trade a utilization win for a late payment catastrophe. I recommend manually checking this the first few times you do it. The whole strategy collapses if you outsmart yourself into a missed payment. And a word of honesty. You do not need to do this every single month unless you are actively preparing for a loan application. It is genuinely high maintenance. Personally, I only go into this level of precision when I know something significant is coming in the next 60 days, a mortgage, a car loan, a lease application. For the rest of the year, I keep utilization generally low. And let autopay handle the basics. Your score will fluctuate naturally, and that is completely fine. The point is that you have a lever you can pull on demand exactly when it matters most. There is one dangerous version of this strategy that can get your account shut down entirely. It is called credit cycling. If you have a $1,000 limit and you spend $1,000, pay it off mid-month, spend another $1,000, pay it off again, and spend a third $1,000, you have technically pushed $3,000 through a $1,000 credit line in a single billing period. You might think the bank loves the activity. They do not. To their risk department, this pattern looks like money laundering or bust-out fraud. Banks gave you a limit based on how much exposure they are willing to have with you. When you cycle through that limit multiple times in 1 month, you are forcing them beyond that boundary. They can freeze your accounts, demand financial documentation, or close everything without warning. Paying down your balance before the statement date is smart. Repeatedly maxing and resetting the same card multiple times in one cycle is dangerous. Keep your spending within your monthly limit even when paying early. And if you find yourself constantly hitting your limit and needing to pay it down just to keep using the card, the answer is not a timing strategy. The answer is a credit limit increase. Call your issuer. Tell them you pay in full every month and you need more room. A higher limit makes utilization management almost effortless. If your limit is $20,000 and you spend $2,000, you are at 10% without even trying. You are naturally sitting in the excellent range without any of this calendar management. One more thing worth mentioning. The scoring model most lenders currently use is called FICO 8. This is the snapshot model we have been discussing. It forgets the past. But newer models like FICO 10T look at your balance history across the last 24 months. They can see whether you are genuinely low risk or whether you are scrambling to look good on paper right before applying. The statement date strategy still works for the utilization component, but these newer models are watching more of your behavior over time. Adoption of these newer models is still slow though. For the majority of mortgages and auto loans right now, the snapshot approach is still the dominant system. Last thing before we wrap up. Please do not close your old credit cards trying to simplify your life. I understand the impulse. But if you close a card with a $10,000 limit and a zero balance, you have just removed $10,000 from your total available credit. Your debt stays exactly the same. Your limit drops. And your utilization percentage spikes immediately, even though you did not spend a single extra dollar. Keep old cards open. Put a small recurring subscription on them, something like a streaming service. Set it to autopay. Let them quietly pad your total available credit and act as ballast, keeping your score stable. Here is how to bring all of this together. Stop treating the due date as the only date on the calendar that matters. Find your statement closing date. Make sure your utilization is under 30% for a good score and under 10% for an excellent one. 3 days before your statement closes, log in and manually pay your balance down to a small amount, not zero, but close. Let the statement close with that tiny balance showing. Watch that number go to the bureaus instead of your peak monthly balance. Then pay off the remaining small amount before the due date, so you owe nothing in interest. 2 payments instead of 1. But the credit report sees you as someone who barely touches their credit limit, month after month after month. The banking system runs on rules. Most people only ever learn the rules about fees and interest. But the rules about reporting dates and data snapshots are just as powerful, maybe more so. When you understand those rules, you stop being a passenger and you start being the one driving. Try this for 1 month. Pick one card. Find the closing date. Pay it down 3 days before. Then watch your monitoring app. When you see that number move, come back and leave a comment telling me how many points you gained. It helps everyone watching know this actually works in the real world. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.